Okay, today on Blue Gum Park Australia we're doing the second part of the Ute modification. So this is where we're going to line the frame I put on. So first of all we've got to actually remove the lining off the roof of the cabin of the Ute so that when I weld to it, it doesn't set fire to the actual lining. So here I'm going to be removing the lining from the roof. Now Ute linings is usually the lining goes underneath the rubber seal there on the back window. So with this I'm going to have to actually run a sharp knife right along the edge of that window sill, and that'll release it from the ceiling. When I'm finished I actually use a spray contact adhesive to put it back up there. So you spray it and then you pull it tight and push it back up so it sits almost as if you hadn't touched it. So I'm just going to show you what it looks like from one angle. So you can see the knife in my hand there, just running along. It's a very, very sharp blade. Going along right as close as you can so that when you glue it back up you don't notice that you've actually cut it. So now we've got it down, we're prepared, ready to start putting the panels on the back. So with the panels I've got to do a fair bit of marking and cutting out. So I'm just cutting it to a manageable size. Now I'm going to actually mark out the panel for the back of the cab there that joins on. So best to mark and do multiple measurements and rather than cut it and find it's wrong size. So you've got to have a nice big flat area. So you can see I've got an old table there that I'm working on so that I can work on a flat bench. Now cutting the big pieces you can use a grinder because it's 1mm gal steel, but when it's right near the edge you can actually use tin snips to do the little trimming, which I'm going to do there. So you can see the tin snips will do it on the edge, but when you're cutting in the middle of a panel you have to use a grinder. Now if you notice there, you can see I've actually got a level. I'm just using it as a straight edge. I'm just grinding the actual gal off and the paint off so that the welder welds properly, because MIG welder won't weld on gal, so you've got to grind it off there. So I just hit that with a little flappy paddle disc on the grinder. So I've got my straight edge there, making sure that I'm nice and straight and flush with the cabin roof so that I don't, so it looks nice and straight when I'm finished. Also in the back of the Ute you can see a bucket there. Now that bucket's full of water with a rag in it, so that if I actually accidentally start a fire in the cab I can grab that rag and put it out straight away. So you've got to keep an eye on what you're doing. You just don't weld without watching. So you keep an eye on what's going on in the cab. So it's sort of a bit hard to tell with the time lapse, but I keep ducking my head down to make sure there's nothing going on in the cab. So always keep a bucket of water and a rag, and if you look down to the bottom or middle of the right picture there's actually a fire extinguisher there. So I've got a couple of fire extinguishers in my shed, decent sized ones, and also a bucket of water. So if the bucket of water doesn't get it out, the big fire extinguisher will. So always have something to put fires out when welding. Otherwise you can get yourself in strife. Now what I'm doing here is you're doing little bits of tack welding here, there. You don't do a seam weld on panel work because otherwise it'll just warp it. Now because I've tried to weld a really big panel here, it's actually hasn't gone like I wanted to. So in a minute you'll see me, I'll actually get up and cut a relief cut in there because it gets a bit of a warp in it. And you'll see I'll start getting heavy weights to actually hold it down flat while I'm welding. So I've got my little hammer there now, put some heavy weights on there to try and hold it flat so it doesn't warp on me. So when you're welding it's not just start at one side and keep going, it's sort of tack from here, there, and just keep an eye on what's going on and adjust as you need. You don't just go at it a bullet a gate, otherwise you'll end up with a twisted piece of metal. It'll look absolutely terrible. So as you can see I'm welding away there. I've got bricks and all sorts of things holding it down because it's doing a little bit of a warp on me, and in a minute here I bite the bullet and actually do a relief cut down the centre. So the rest of the panels I'll just use smaller panels so the small panels don't warp as easy. So here we go, I'm going to get the grinder, there we go. I'm cutting a relief cut there to take the warp out of the roof, and then I'll weld it back up. So you just got to go steady as you go and keep an eye on what's happening so that you don't end up with a terrible job at the end. So I'm running my little house brick along there to hold it flat so it pushes into that cut I just created. So coming to the end now, just tacking up the last little bits around the back corner there. So as you would have seen, you do a bit of, there's a fair bit of trimming and bending, like I was using a pair of pliers there and a hammer to sort of fold that metal into the corner rather than have a sharp corner. It's nice and rounded. So you sit there and trim it all up and make it nice. So the more time you spend trimming, the less time you spend sanding and bogging to try and make it look smooth. It's better off making it look good from the start. So we've pretty well got all the panels on there now. So I just got to go around and fully weld it. So I'd go and weld it, lots and lots of tacks side by side, so you end up fully welding it, but you don't do it in a seam, otherwise, as I said before, it will warp the panel. And I've also welded up all the little holes. That's what I'm doing there, where the little tie downs used to be, little holes on the side for the old tourniquet cover. I weld that up, and over there you can see above the petrol tank I've actually got a flame-proof blanket in there now, because I'm welding where sparks would fall down, so you can't get any sparks down there. So yeah, coming to the end of this part of the Ute modification, so I really hope you like it, and yeah, stay tuned for part 3 of the Ute modification videos. Thank you very much once again for watching, and I hope you really enjoyed it.